What is up, everyone? Welcome in to the Fight HQ preview for UFC 289. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. That is a fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. here to break down this fight card for you here. Me and Pete were kind of, going back and forth before the show of what we like. And, look, from a pay-per-view, this is not the kind of pay-per-view we've been getting out of the UFC for the, a little bit of a while. I mean, obviously there's been some changes that have happened with this one, but I think we're all excited for the co-main event in terms of this one. So, Pete, man, how you doing, man?
What's going on? What's up, everybody? Thank you guys for joining us. Another week of fights, couple matchups to be interested about for the most part. It's an okay card. I like some names on the card, so obviously I'm a little intrigued to see how they perform. But it's definitely not the pay-per-view quality that we're accustomed to. But regardless, there's big prize money to be made over on DraftKings, and we're going to do our best to try to get you guys to take down the tournament or take one down ourselves. That would be very nice.
Of course, the DK contest is already live for the Fight HQ because you can click that link right there in the description. Join the Fight HQ contest. Top three winners do pay out in that field. So I've been on a very terrible run here in cash lineup. So hopefully I can turn things around here coming up here on Saturday. Of course, be sure to join our Discord channel. Totally free to join. I know we've already got some questions in. We'll get to those as we get to the end of the show. So let's talk a little game theory here. And Pete, I got to share, you have a great game theory here today in terms of building lines for UFC 289 and attacking certain fights.
Yeah, I mean, to me, right, like it's really tough to navigate throughout the entire card and have your exposures set perfectly. So the best way to do so is by, utilizing a tool that, we can utilize in stochastic.fantasycruncher.com or any type of crunching device. And what I'm looking to do is just target certain fights. I think the main event's, very, very important. One way or another, I think it's going to be a good score. In addition to that, some other fights that I feel are complete GPPs, the Malott Fugitt fight, the Landwehr 𝐉𝐸𝐵 fight, Nelson Bilder, and obviously Dariush Oliveira. So I'm going to be prioritizing those fights, and that is going to be how I'm looking to attack this slate. It doesn't seem like that it's kind of obvious what I just pointed out, but unless you go in there, you make tweaks and adjustments to your crutcher, you could actually be going underweight to some of those fights when you actually should be getting aggressive to them. So that's how I'm going to be looking to attack the slate. And, how else I create lineups will just completely depend on my randomness and who I'm feeling super confident in. Perhaps there's somebody in the mid-range we'll get to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. I think there's certain fights you definitely want to target. Then there's some fights that you look at and you just go, man, I just do not feel good about going either side in terms of GPP. And of course, trying to, get to 650, 700 points so you'll be able to take down those big GPPs. But Pete, let's get right into the main event. It is a matchup of Amanda Nunes defending her bantamweight title against Irene Aldana. Amanda Nunes is a minus 320 betting favorite, plus 250 for Aldana over on DK, 9,500 for the champ, and 6,700 for the challenger. And then Nunes is $23 on DraftKings, or excuse me, $23 on FanDuel, and $13 over for Irene Aldana. Pete, what's your thoughts?
So, I mean, I like the fight, right? So I like the fight, and I'm going to prioritize getting to the fight. I think that there's a clear advantage in one area for Amanda Nunes, and that's by utilizing her grappling, managing her gas tank, not going too crazy early on, where she's super taxed and now she's a liability and she's able to get, finished. I think that if she goes in there how she just was against Juliana Pena, mixing things up, 5-round decision, completely dominant, landing 85 significant strikes, landing 6 of 8 takedowns, having tons of control time, and just looking a step ahead all throughout. That type of fight is going to it's going to get her another defense for her title here against Irene Aldana. Now, if she just wants to go out there and make a point and stand and trade with Irene Aldana, I do think that the underdog is more than live. I have to tell you, I think she's more than live. Very rarely do you find fighters in women's mixed martial arts that are true finishers and have the power to just shut your lights off. And I do think that Irene Aldana has showcased that in the past. Clear Achilles heel in the grappling department, as I mentioned, but there have been worse strikers to expose the cardio in the chin of Amanda Nunes if she's just completely overexerting herself. So all comes down to energy usage. Obviously, I'm going to be siding with Amanda Nunes. Has a more has a longer resume. Has fought the who's who. At some point, though, you would think that age, miles, and everything are starting to catch up to you. Motivation, all of that, but she could be one of these fighters that just walks away on top and doesn't really have a challenger to dethrone her. But I will say that Irene Aldana's price point's, almost broken unless you think that she gets finished super, super early. 6,700, so cheap. I'm going to stack in a few just because I think that, a small handful of lineups is okay. Don't stack too much. But I'm expecting a good fight, to be honest, especially if it's on the feet. I'm going to still be siding with Amanda Nunes, but of all the challengers we've been seeing, I think that Aldana represents a strong striking case to dethrone Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, when I started hand building cash lineups, it was really hard for me not to go to Aldana in this spot just because of that price tag. And if she can get this thing to go 25 minutes. Now, over on Prize Picks, I will tell you one of the props I really do like is that takedown prop on Amanda Nunes. Right now, it's sitting at 2. I think that's a smash the over at this point now. That's saying that she goes out there and fights with a smart game plan. Right. It seemed, there was this narrative earlier this week of maybe is this the last dance for Amanda Nunes? She kind of really shot that down this week a little bit, with her words about Juliana Pena. But I mean, look, you never know when the end's going to come here. I will say this: one of the props I would not mind attacking would be Nunes wins via submission, which I want to say earlier in the week. I want to say it was like plus 540.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I mean, that's the route to expose Irene Aldana, and it's the safest way to try to to get a victory over her. I mean, we have seen Amanda Nunes attempt a submission against Juliana Pena most recently. 2 submission attempts against Megan Anderson. Prior to that, 1 against Felicia Spencer, 2 against Jermaine Durandamy. So she's hunting submissions if she gets the fight to the ground. So there was a time when you could ragdoll her, but she has the upper hand in the grappling and wrestling in this fight. I think that she just has to be wise with how she taxes her gas tank because Aldana's hands are really, really good, and that camp of hers does have a little bit of momentum, so it could be a shift in the a shift in momentum from the gym and just riding high with seeing your teammate capture the title. So we'll have to see, but I'm still going with Amanda Nunes here.
Of course, the co-main event is a matchup that I would basically just describe as a lightweight title eliminator matchup between Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. Of course, Oliveira, the former champion, is the betting underdog here, plus 126, minus 150 for Dariush. Dariush is 8,600 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. The Bronx is 7,600 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. And, I mean, look, I think that the Bronx is going to be one of the most popular underdogs on this slate tomorrow.
Yeah, so I was at work last night and I was thinking like, oh man, I'm feeling confident in Beneil Dariush, and then I started to really think like, well, why am I feeling confident? And it's kind of recency bias, right? Like we see Charles Oliveira get hurt in almost all of his fights, and then he overcomes adversity. And most recently, he had a poor performance against Islam Makhachev, hurt and then submitted in the second round. And it was somewhat reminiscent of the old Charles Oliveira. So I feel like everybody is going to be down on Charles Oliveira to a point, but let's really not let that recency bias cloud the ceiling and the aggressiveness and just how dangerous Charles Oliveira is. I mean, there was a point when you could hit Oliveira with a big shot and he would wilt and just cower in the corner. And then he flipped a switch mentally and he turned into an absolute monster, striking, submission-wise. Was always a dangerous submission threat. But the guy in Islam Makhachev who is not afraid of going to the ground with him, I feel like it humanized Charles Oliveira to a point. Now, I'm interested to see if there are any grappling exchanges between Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush. Dariush, a fantastic grappler in his own right, was one step ahead of Mateusz Gamrot in some of the grappling and scrambling situations, and Gamrot can scramble like the best of them within the division. Him and Arman Tsarukyan had an absolute war. So like Beneil Dariush has fantastic power, good jiu-jitsu skills, good grappling. I just feel like, he's on a heater right now, an absolute crazy win streak. Wins over 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵𝐵, Dober, Camacho, Close, Holtzman, Diego Ferreira, Ferguson, and Gamrot. But like if you go back and you look at his losses, you can starch Beneil Dariush, or at least you could by hitting him early, knocking him out with a shot, and just kind of not letting him get into the fight. That's my one worry of where I was going to plant my flag on Beneil Dariush. And I was like, yeah, you guys know how I play. Like I get super aggressive and I lock somebody in most times, and then sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really bad. I was saying I don't want to bet against Charles Oliveira because he is now looking to climb back to the top. I'm sure he's hungry, he's emotional. I'm still going to side with Beneil Dariush to win the fight just because I think he has the power to hurt Oliveira, the grappling to negate it to a point. But I did not want to plant my flag and just go super aggressive on Dariush when you have one of the best finishers of all time and one of the best fighters in reigns of all time, in my opinion, and Charles Oliveira at 7,600. So the lean is Dariush. But in general, I love this fight, and I'm probably going to be near 60-40, 50-50 split on exposure.
Dariush is one of those guys that's really had to take the long road to get here. I mean, unfortunately, he was supposed to fight Makhachev before Makhachev ultimately became the champion. That fight did not come together. For some reason, like I feel like if Dariush gets the job done, I think it's in round 2. For whatever reason, I keep seeing a round 2 Dariush finish. But I mean, look, we all know what DeBronx could do in the first round. I just think this is a fight that you have to give to. I will say this. Looking at the ownership projections, this may be that sneaky fight to potentially attack in the MVP spot on FanDuel if you play over on FanDuel. That to me, just because the ownership is so low on both sides in terms of the MVP, not necessarily. And I'll say this: I with the ownership projections are currently at, I'm surprised it's not higher for Charles Oliveira. But I would think that's definitely going to change, and I would imagine a lot of cash lineups, single entry, you're going to see a lot of ownership there for the former champion. Next up, we got Mike Malott taking on Adam Fugitt. Fugitt is a plus 170 betting underdog, minus 200 for Malott. Malott is 8,800 on DK, $19 on FanDuel, and for Adam, he's 7,400 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Pete, which thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to continue to repeat myself today, but this is a fight I love, and I'm going to get to it a ton because one way or another, I think that you're going to have a high score. So prioritizing this welterweight clash between Mike Malott and Adam Fugitt, I think that Mike Malott is a very dangerous round 1 fighter, has great round 1 upside, priced at 8,800. We've seen him go to the mat, and we've seen him capture submissions. He's very, very slick in the submission department. On the feet, he has really heavy hands, and that was on display in his KO TKO finish over Mickey Gall in round 1. So with all that being said, he's well-rounded, but he's relatively untested outside of round 1. And that's where one of these days he's going to run into a dilemma where if he can't find the early finish, does he still have that same type of gas tank? Does he still have that same type of output? Is he able to still be the same fighter from minute 6 to minute 15? A lot of times when you're an early finisher, I don't know. It becomes a habit. You hunt that finish so bad, and you're taxed come rounds 2 and round 3. Sometimes you're ready to go rounds 2 and rounds 3. We don't know until we really see him go out there and get put under duress and rise to the occasion. That is why I'm not crossing off Adam Fugitt here at all. I think Fugitt on short notice looked relatively good against a prospect in Michael Morales. He did end up going into the 3rd round and was surprising a ton of people. He threw 113 significant strikes, landed 64, was attempting takedowns a lot and had Michael Morales defensive. He attempted 8 takedowns, only had success on 1 of them. But what that did is it kept his opponent defending. And next thing you know, 2/3 of the fight is gone. And then Michael Morales really had to turn it up and then knocked him out in the 3rd round. I think that he rebounded very nicely against Yusaku Kinoshita in his first round KO TKO finish, where you saw him go to the takedown well early and often. 4 out of 7 takedown attempts en route to a very, very dangerous and brutal finish. I like this fight, man. The lean is still going to be Mike Malott in his hometown. Hits really well. I know he has good ground game as well. There's just questions here. So where people are going to be locking Mike Malott or just, getting super aggressive, I still have some worries. So I'm a little hesitant to plant the flag on Mike Malott. I definitely can't plant the flag on Adam Fugitt because I think that Malott is legitimate. But with that being said, it's a lean towards Malott, picking him to win. But in general, I love this fight. I think that there's no way that this fight is not optimal.
Yeah, this was one of those matchups I was kind of hoping there'd be a takedown prop over on Prize Picks, but there is not in terms of that. I'll tell you on Prize Picks, there's not really a ton that I love this week. I know there's one line that Pete really likes. We'll get to that fight a little bit later on in the show, but I do give the slight edge to Malott, and it's. But I don't mind getting Adam as an underdog as well. Next up, we got the matchup that I absolutely love. Dan Ige taking on Nate the Train, Nate Landwehr. Dan Ige minus 260 betting favorite, plus 210 for Nate Landwehr. Ige 9,100 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. Nate is 7,100 on DK, $10 on FanDuel.
A little redundant, but I'm telling you, I like this fight. So this is how I'm attacking this slate. So obviously, if you want to get different than me, just do exactly the opposite. But I feel like I've nailed down the pretty obvious fights to prioritize. And this featherweight clash between Dan Ige, priced at 9,100, and Nate Landwehr at 7,100 is going to be a priority for me. Ige 8-5 in the UFC, Landwehr 4-2 in the UFC. We've seen Landwehr just really hit a stride and have a ton of momentum with a submission victory over Ludovic Klein, a majority decision over David Onama, and a second-round submission over Austin Lingo. The Ludovic Klein one kind of, it made everybody scratch their head. Like, okay, either Ludovic Klein is not legitimate or that, Nate Landwehr is what we thought he was back in M1. Super dangerous. Maybe he just had two fluky losses to Julian Erosa, got hit with a big shot. But the Herbert Burns one is kind of that stinker where it's like, that's the one that's a little ugly of a loss, but it was in his UFC debut. So we'll give him a pass with that. That's why everybody, including myself, thought he was probably going to get knocked out against Ludovic Klein and David Onama. David Onama, in my opinion, was one of the prospects within a division that I circled because I think that he has good hands, good wrestling, good everything. And Landwehr just broke him. Landwehr's pace can break anybody. His chin is up in the air, so I do worry about counter shots. And it's pretty obvious that, the counter shot of Herbert Burns and the explosive shot that Julian Erosa landed, there are holes in his striking defense. So you can catch Nate Landwehr. It's just inconsistent because in some of these fights, his chin's up, he's getting hit with shots, and it's like, ooh, I thought he was going to go out with that, and he seems unfazed. So I can't really bank on a Dan Ige knockout. I feel like almost everybody's banking on a Dan Ige knockout, and he is a lower volume fighter who is probably the more skilled of the two. And I think that is like, if you put all their skills on the table, I think Dan Ige edges him just ever so slightly. But at some point, I think volume and aggressiveness can actually, tilt towards Nate Landwehr's favor. And I'm actually going to be picking Nate Landwehr here. And I know Dan Ige my guy. His resume has been against super legitimate opponents: 𝐉𝐸𝐻𝐵, Josh Emmett, Damon Jackson, Chan Sung Jung. I can go on and on and on. Calvin Kattar. He's lost decisions. So I think everybody is expecting him to just get a very easy win over Nate Landwehr. And even if it's not easy, just have all the answers for Nate Landwehr because of his experience. And I don't know if I'm buying it necessarily. Like, I love Dan Ige, but I just feel like, we can see a pace pusher in Nate Landwehr just keep Ige super defensive, where Ige's all of a sudden in a hole down 2 rounds, and now you're banking on a 3rd round knockout that never comes. Regardless, I'm prioritizing this fight. This fight's going to be fireworks, and I can't wait to watch it. Nate the Train in the UFC, baby.
Look, Dan Ige, he loses against the elite of this division, but these are usually the fights that he shines in. And I think that he takes advantage of Nate. But, look, do I want to get it to Nate as well in this fight? No question about it. But I I feel like Dan Ige wins 2nd round knockout.
I'm just rooting for Nate to get more mic time. That's all I'm rooting for. Like, I've grown to really like him. So I've always liked his fighting style. I think that if you go back and you watch his M1 highlights, it's like really impressive. Like I've always
Yeah.
thought he's really impressive. His ground game's good. His ground and pound's excellent. He's got the the craziest dog in him. You can always count on him to just give it his all. And not saying that Danny Ige can't. I just think that this is a nice little litmus test, and we'll see if Nate Landwehr passes.
Then our opening fight of the pay-per-view will be Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Eryk Anders. Anders is a plus 115 betting underdog, minus 135 for Barriault. Barriault 8,400 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. Anders is 7,800 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. Pete, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this fight to me is not going to be a priority. I'm going to get to it, right? You got Marc-Andre Barriault, who, fighting in his hometown, or I shouldn't say hometown, home country. You know, he's okay. I mean, the second round victory over Julian Marquez is going to look better than really what it is to me. He picked up a first round submission over Jordan Wright. Okay. I'm not really impressed with that. Dalcha Lungimbula, not impressed with that at all. 𝐉𝐸𝐻𝐵𝐻, okay, then third round, scored massive at 132. The Marquez one was massive at 119, caught him cold in the second. So, I think that Marc-Andre Barriault, the power bar, gets stronger as the fight goes on and will be a common choice in the mid-range for most people. But Eryk Anders is just a big guy. He's huge, right? And when, he scored 51 against Jun Park and he attempted 24 takedown attempts. Do you believe that, Jason? 24 takedown attempts, only had success with 3 of them, but had 4.5 minutes of control time. That's my worry with Back and Barriault here, is that Anders is just too big, too strong, puts Barriault against the cage, whether he's attempting takedowns or succeeding in the grappling. I just think that Anders is going to be dictating where the fight takes place, and that's where Marc-Andre Barriault is just going to be a step behind. I think on the outside, if Barriault gets some momentum going, his strikes and his volume can really overwhelm a lot of people within the division. But I just think that Anders being tricky, having big power to keep the respect of Marc-Andre Barriault, in addition to just being strong and having good cage control, I'm actually going to be picking Eryk Anders to win an ugly, ugly decision. Not a priority fight for me. I can see it going either way, but I'm not really going to plant my flag at the mid-range at Marc-Andre Barriault. I'll side with the underdog in Eryk Anders.
I don't really love this matchup for GPPs just because I just don't see it being very high scoring. I think this thing's going to go 15 minutes. I do like the over 14 3/4 fight time on Barriault on Prize Picks. I also like Barriault's significant strike over, which is 63.5. Eryk Anders has been a guy that's been going to various gyms. He did majority of his camp at the MMA lab. Prior to that, he had spent some time at Factory X. Prior to that, he had spent some time at Fight Ready. There was an issue between Anders' management and the owner of Fight Ready. That's why either those fighters have left that management company or have left Fight Ready. And but he's been to multiple gyms. That's one of those things of what can the MMA lab coaches do with Eryk Anders such a short period of time. And my guess is if Anders wins this one, it's because Eric's never been a high volume guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in New England, it's common that you're going to multiple gyms just because of the volume of professional fighters within the area is low. But going from major gym to major gym to me is somewhat of a red flag. It seems like you're searching for answers. Not the biggest fan of gym hoppers. Not saying that you can't cross train by any means, but that you need to be with a stable team. Stability is great, especially when a coach knows you better than anybody because they can help you. You can only help yourself so much. Yes, you're the one getting in there and competing, but there are so many other factors leading up to an MMA fight that I just feel like some people are missing. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of seeing that, and it kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit, but still making me slightly side with Eryk Anders here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm siding with Barriault in this one, but I just don't see this being a fight that's optimal in terms of GPPs. Next up, got a great matchup here between Imavov and Curtis. Imavov is a minus 160 betting favorite, plus 135 for the action man. Over on DK, Imavov is 8,500, 7,700 for Curtis, and on FanDuel, $18 for Imavov, $13 for Curtis. Chris, Pete.
Okay, well, we'll see. I mean, we're gonna see if this fight's gonna sink my ship or not. I'm okay if it does, because this is how I feel like I have to get different, And I'm gonna go with Nassourdine Imavov here, priced in the mid range. I liked him against Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland beat the hell out of him. But what it did is it gave Nassourdine Imavov some really, really valuable experience, and then he actually was able to come back a little bit and display some heart. The skills are there, man. Like, this guy has good hands. He has good submission ability. For a little bit in that fight against Sean Strickland, he was just a step behind, getting pieced up. Kind of hard when you never really face somebody on the same striking level as you. Never mind somebody who's better than you. And Strickland just looked like the true vet there. So I'm not saying that Nassourdine Imavov is, for me, it's not like recency bias and I'm going to bet against him here. He gets now Chris Curtis, Sean Strickland's teammate. And in my opinion, that 5-round experience is going to work wonders for Nassourdine Imavov. He's always been dangerous. He hits really good, throws great straight shots down the middle, has a piston right hand, slips his head off center line for Chris Curtis's straight left hand, throws knees up the middle. He's fought some southpaws in the past, Joaquin Buckley, Jordan Williams. I liked what I saw in some of those. And I think that he has a good chin as well. So, I mean, I'm going to be going Nassourdine Imavov. And I think the X factor here that hasn't been on display in the UFC yet, really, is Chris Curtis's ground game. Like, outside the UFC, it's always been a work in progress. And at Extreme Couture, Chris Curtis has been working diligently to make sure that he is keeping the fight on the feet so he can outpoint, outbox, or knock you out. And he's looked great at that. But there was a time where if you could take Chris Curtis down, you could ragdoll him and put him in a bad spot and possibly submit him. I just think that Nassourdine Imavov has those skills to make it a complete MMA fight where Chris Curtis is going to be defending, put in bad spots, and Imavov is going to capitalize. So I think Imavov's going to finish Chris Curtis here, to be honest. And if he doesn't finish him, I think it's going to be lacing up those wrestling shoes and actually landing takedowns. And Chris Curtis's great ability to get back to his feet could lead to a higher score. So the flag plant of the week for me is going to be Nassourdine Imavov. It's a risky one because Chris Curtis as an underdog is an absolute stud. Knocked out Phil Hawes, Brennan Allen, Rodolfo Vieira decision. Lost to Jack Hermanson in a decision, lost to Kelvin Gastelum, common opponent in Joaquin Buckley. He was able to knock him out in the second round, whereas Nassourdine Imavov was only able to win a decision. So I'm going to be going Imavov here at 8,500, and that is my flag plant of the week.
Yeah, I like the Imavov side in this matchup. Chris Curtis, I mean, one thing about the action man is this guy is always going to sign up for a fight. Be interesting to maybe see if this does not go his way, will he potentially go back down to 170? He's talked about in interviews that, that cut is just brutal for him. But I just think this is a bad matchup for him, and I like Imavov to get the win here as well. Then we got a female matchup. We got Miranda Maverick as a 3-1 betting favorite, taking on Jasmine here. Maverick, 9,300 DK, $22 on FanDuel. Jasmine is a plus 240 betting underdog, 6,900 on DK, $8 on FanDuel, Pete.
Women's MMA. You got an underdog in Jasmine Jasudavicius here at 6,900. Miranda Maverick, who at one point was a bright prospect within the flyweight division, here at 9,300. Good striking, better striking for Miranda Maverick in this matchup against Jasmine Jasudavicius. I would say better jiu-jitsu as well. But the wrestling's a little weird because she can pick up takedowns. She's good at getting takedowns. But I think that Jasmine actually might be the better wrestler here, and that might be a hot take. Hasn't really been on display in the UFC yet. But that she can at least negate takedowns. They both can negate takedowns. And then it comes to me, who's the better striker, and I'm going to be siding with Miranda Maverick here. I don't think that a finish happens. I think that a decision occurs. And because of the negating of takedown attempts, I think that Miranda Maverick is going to pick up a decision.
Yeah, I like Maverick in this situation. I want to say on Prize Picks or takedown prop, I think it's 2. I mean, if I was going to play that, I would rather go more than 2 than under 2. It's probably a good number. But I think Maverick is clearly the A side in this matchup, but not one of those Prize Picks props that I really loved.
Yeah, no, I personally wouldn't play that just because it's just like, they both have good wrestling, and I mean, that it seems like a tough line to go after.
Next up, we got 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng taking on Aiemann Zahabi. 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng is a -105. Zahabi -115 on DK. 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng 8,300, $16 on FanDuel. Zahabi 7,900 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about this fight. I'm just like huffing and puffing over here. Not a big fan of the fight, bantamweight fight. 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng previously being at flyweight, back-to-back losses to Jeff Molina, Cody Durden, and then deciding to go up to bantamweight, picking up a first-round KO over Cameron Else and then a decision win over Jay Perrin. You have Aiemann Zahabi, who has been at bantamweight throughout his entire UFC career, facing Reginald Oliveira, Ricardo Ramos, Vince Morales, Draco Rodriguez, and Ricky Turcios. It's a close fight. I really think that they both can have some success against each other. I think that 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng throwing okay volume, looking to mix in some takedowns is an all right strategy, but I do think that the strategists in the Zahabi side and the Zahabi family, I think that they always are, putting together solid game plans. I mean, that was on display against Ricky Turcios. Had a good first round victory over Draco Rodriguez. I just think that Aiemann Zahabi's really limited. Like, in my opinion, I think he's super limited. I don't think he's really that good. So it's really hard for me to get behind him. He does have 2 knockdowns in the UFC. If you go and you look at 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng, he has 1 knockdown in the UFC, and that was against Cameron Else. So I'm going to be siding with Aiemann Zahabi here at 7,900 to win a decision. Not my favorite fight to target, but because of the low, because of the skill, the skill sets of both fighters, I do think that it's a low level fight, and sometimes in low level fights there's a ton of volatility. So I'm not willing to back one of these guys confidently. I'm gonna have a split of exposure, but I'll go with Aiemann Zahabi here.
I don't feel good in picking either one of these guys, Pete.
Yeah, me either, man.
I mean, I feel like with Aiemann Zahabi, I can never get his fight right. I mean, I've just never been big on him. It's a slight lean to me for 𝐉𝐸𝐬𝐿eng in this one, but I don't know if it's really a fight that I would want to prioritize in terms of GPPs. But if you're looking to save salary, I could see you maybe trying to get there in terms of this one. Next up, we got a match between Blake Bilder and Kyle Nelson. Bilder a -240 betting favorite, plus 195 for Kyle Nelson. Bilder is 9,000 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. Nelson 7,200 on DK and $11 on FanDuel. Beat.
Yeah, so the Bilder Nelson fight's a fight I am going to be prioritizing. It really reminds me a lot of the Mike Malott Adam Fugitt fight. And the reason I like this fight from a GPP aspect is I think a finish is going to happen one way or another. Regionally, we saw Blake Bilder hit with some big shots, knocked down countless times. Right hand seemed to find a home on Bilder's chin. Outside of that, though, we have seen some significant development in his game. He's been really working on his boxing extensively with a fantastic coach. You can go on a social media and see that he's really putting in the time. He has good power in his hands, and in addition to that, he has excellent jiu-jitsu and wrestling in his back pocket. More so from the wrestling more so in the jiu-jitsu department than the wrestling. He attempted 7 takedowns against Shane Young, only found success with 1 of them. But Shane Young's a tough out, not a phenomenal fighter by any means, but a tough out. Kyle Nelson, if you look at his box score and you go throughout the entire thing, it is one of the ugliest records ever. And I'm really over here scratching my head, Jason. Like, how the hell is Kyle Nelson still in the UFC? Who does he know? What dirt does he have on somebody? I don't know. Good for him, though. He's been around for a while. Debuting against 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐵, getting knocked out in the 2nd round. Losing to Matt Sales, not really the best look in the 3rd round via submission. Knocking out Polo Reyes in devastating fashion in round 1. Losing to Billy Quarantillo in the 3rd round and then losing a decision to 𝐉𝐻𝐵HR, and most recently scoring a draw against 𝐉𝐸𝐳. It's just like, what an ugly, ugly record. But okay, if you go and you look at his takedown numbers, attempted 10 takedowns against 𝐉𝐸𝐳, landed 5 of them. Attempted 4 against 𝐉𝐻𝐵HR and Billy Quarantillo. Didn't find success in either one of those fights with it. Attempted 10 takedowns against Matt Sales, and what that did is it really taxed his gas tank and then led to him getting submitted. So if he attempts takedowns like that against Blake Bilder, I think that Bilder has the jiu-jitsu pedigree to get him out of there. And then if you look, he hasn't achieved a knockdown in any of his fights, which is a little funny because he did knock out Polo Reyes. But outside of that fight, there's no knockdowns accrued at all. So I don't think he's going to be the better grappler than Blake Bilder. I know he has a missile of a right hand and can knock down Blake Bilder. Lesser competition has done so on the regional scene, but there's not enough confidence here for me to say Kyle Nelson's going to spoil the record of Blake Bilder. So I'm going to be going with Bilder to win the fight inside the distance at 9,000. I think he's a fine option, but just because of the volatility in the chins of both fighters and just the question marks, I'm still going to be getting to the underdog just because.
I think my concern on the Bilder side maybe is that an early swarm by Kyle Nelson.
Yeah, exactly.
But do have those cardio concerns. If this thing gets in the second and third round, I really do think that Blake can really take over. But I think it's more about just kind of weathering that early storm that most likely will be coming from Kyle Nelson. Next up, we got a matchup that went through an opponent change. David Dvorak taking on Stefan Eryk. 9,400 for Dvorak, $21 on FanDuel for him. He's a minus 270 betting favorite. Steven plus 220 as a betting underdog. $9 on FanDuel, 6,800 on DK. Pete.
Yeah, what a fight, huh? 9,400 for David Dvorak. Probably not a price tag I'm in love with, to be honest, because I don't think that he's going to be the better grappler in this situation. And he's going to need to strike on the outside and avoid the grappling of Steven Erceg, because Erceg is very good at getting a hold of you, getting position, holding you, winning control time, and sinking in some submissions. I think that David Dvorak is a very, very tough debut for anybody. He is 3-2 in the UFC. Wins over Bruno Silva, Jordan Espinoza, and Juan Camilo Ronderos. Back-to-back defeats over Mateusz Nicolau and Manel Kape. He's fought the who's who, or some of the who's who within that division already in the flyweight division. So I'm not saying it's impossible for Steven Erceg to win a decision or submit David Dvorak. I think it's highly unlikely. It's a price point play more than anything, possibly because of the low amount of fights we have on this card. You could have a losing fighter sneak into the optimal lineup. I would probably think that it's Irene Aldana over Steven Erceg, but perhaps it comes down to damage versus control, and Dvorak busts at 9,400, and Steven Erceg in a loss gets enough takedowns, control time, and like 50-something points in a defeat at 6,800. But it's a fight where I'm not prioritizing by any means. I'll get a little bit more aggressive than the field on Steven Erceg just in case something silly happens. But I think that David Dvorak's going to win here at 9,400.
Yeah, I like Dvorak in this situation as well. Of course, Steven coming here on short notice. See what he's able to do here. And then our first fight of the night. This is a fight that is you're just hoping that this thing is not optimal, because I don't know which side you want to get to here. You got Belbita taking on Oliveira. Belbita is a minus 120 betting favorite, plus 100 for Oliveira, 8,000 for Diana on DK. Maria is a 200, and then Maria is $16 on FanDuel and $15 for Diana. Pete, what's your thoughts on this matchup?
What are my thoughts? My thoughts are I hope this fight is not optimal, because this fight is horrendous. And the reason it's so horrendous is they're both so low level. And it's very frustrating to go through fight film and try to have a confident stand on either one of these sides. Diana Belbita, she's fought Molly McCann. Okay, Molly McCann's a notable name within the division. Liana Jojua, Hannah Goldie, Gloria DePaula. Best win is Hannah Goldie. If you go and you look at Maria Oliveira, Tabitha Ricci completely outgrappled her. Split decision over Gloria DePaula and Vanessa Demopoulos. No crazy notable name here. They both throw with high volume. I think if it's pretty clear that Maria Oliveira needs to keep the fight on the feet, because if she's up against anybody that can incorporate takedowns, she's at risk of losing a decision or possibly getting submitted. More so about losing minutes en route to a decision defeat, as evidence in the past fights that she's had against Demopoulos and Tabitha Ricci. They both throw super high volume. The issue is that Diana Belbita doesn't have the best control, even if she lands takedowns. She's landed a takedown against Molly McCann, Liana Jojua, and still had less than a minute and a half of control time. And then when she took down Liana Jojua, she was submitted pretty quickly in round 1. So I'm looking over here at the striking numbers, and I'm actually going to be leaning towards Maria Oliveira. It's a slight lean, man. I don't really want to pick either one of these fighters. It's kind of crazy that I'm picking a fighter who threw 297 significant strikes against Gloria De Paula and landed only 96. Jason, I was telling you before the show, how the hell do you miss 200 significant strikes? What were you aiming at? 200 significant strikes in a 15-minute fight. But sometimes volume, even if you're not landing, looks good on judges. Especially if not much is going on. So I'm going to be siding with Maria Oliveira, but holy hell, I do not like this fight.
And Pete did mention he does like the significant strike prop on Maria at 77.5 over on Prize Picks. I think Pete was like, just smash that over, because that's where that one's going to go. Let's get into, we're going to do our straight up fight picks here. Then we'll answer questions to wrap up this episode. The main event, I got to go with Amanda Nunes.
I've picked against Amanda Nunes so many times that I can't do it again. But I'm going to go Amanda Nunes and watch Aldana spoil it, but I'll go Nunes.
I'll go underdog number 1 and Charles Oliveira.
Interesting. I'm going to go Dariush.
Mike Malott.
Malott.
Danny Ige.
Landwehr. Nate the Train in the UFC, baby.
Marc-Andre Barriault.
I'm going to go Eryk Anders.
I'll go Imavov. Maverick. Give me Aoriqileng.
Zahabi.
Bilder. Dvorak. Can I just go get a coin and just flip up in the air?
I mean, really,
I'll go Oliveira, but have no faith in that one.
Zero faith in this fight, Oliveira.
Of course, if you're tuning in, so right here on YouTube, be sure to smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, try to get over 1,000 subscriptions. And of course, if you're listening to us over the podcast platforms, be sure to check out that. I was checking out the numbers the other day on that. We're doing pretty well over there. So appreciate everyone tuning in on the podcast channels. Mention some questions that we got over in Discord here first. Tristan saying, rank the 9K options and who has the highest takedown upside?
All right, so let's rank them based on confidence. Got to be Nunes, Dvorak.
So you got Dvorak, Bilder, Maverick, Ige, and Nunes. So you got 5.
Yeah, but if you're looking confidence, right? Like say we're doing confidence, we're not doing score. Nunes, Dvorak, Maverick, Bilder, Ige.
I would personally put Ige higher up. I mean, if I was going to go, I mean, the thing with Nunes, a huge takedown upside. We both know that. Huge takedown upside. Thing goes 25 minutes, and she's getting a takedown around all the control time, and strike something on the mat, maybe gets some submissions. She can really rack up the points. I mean, I'd probably go 1 Nunes, 2 Ige, 3 Bilder, 4 Maverick, 5 Dvorak.
Yeah, so confidence-wise was how I said it. And when it comes to takedowns, it's Nunes for me, Bilder, Maverick, Ige, Dvorak.
Next up, this comes in from Shine. He says, for the show, from a betting perspective, most confident picks, favorite inside the distance fights, dog of the card, prop that you like, parlay. The prop that I liked, I mentioned a little bit earlier, is Nunes via submission, which was 5-1 odds. The most confident picks, I mean, we kind of went over that. From a betting perspective, you know what? I might say Imavov at -160.
Yeah, I like Imavov a lot. Watch him get completely knocked out from Chris Curtis, but Imavov is my favorite spot on the entire card. I'm trying to find that spot on the card, the sweet spot, and he's at that sweet spot that I want. So he's my favorite. As far as underdog of the card, Jason ain't gonna like it, but Nate the Train in the UFC, baby.
Look, I don't mind. I get why you want to go there.
He's plus 200. I think that that's a good lot. Like, that's a good value in my opinion. You know, he's gonna, if he doesn't get knocked out, say he doesn't get knocked out, don't you think he's gonna fight better than a plus 200 fighter? I think so.
Yeah, I was just gonna pull up to see what is he to win via decision.
Yeah, I like that as well. I mean, for
because
him to win,
Ige
plus 450.
God, I mean,
It's a good number.
It's a good. I feel like I would chase the win by decision prop.
See what I'm saying? It's a good number. I think that it's just a value play, and that's like, I think if he doesn't get knocked out, and sometimes we overrate how often people get knocked out. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't get knocked out, man, he's a dog. He has volume and he has heart. So,
favorite inside the distance fights. For me, I would say Dariush, Oliveira, Ige, Landwehr, Bilder, Nelson would be my top ones.
Yeah, it's all the ones I mentioned in the past. Nunes, it's the main event for me. Malott, Fugitt, Landwehr, Nelson, Landwehr, Ige, Nelson, Bilder, and Dariush, Oliveira.
The underdog of the card. Like, I know someone in the YouTube said, "Who's this week's Damon Blackshear?" With what he was able to do last week.
That was crazy. Lacerda looked terrible.
I know. I mean, there's not an underdog. I mean, the underdog. I mean, I would say Charles.
Say it one time, Jason.
I would say Charles Oliveira. I mean,
say it one time, Jason.
Who do you think I was gonna say?
Nate the Train in the UFC, baby. You got to say it. Come on, man. If he wins, Jason needs to put out a Nate the Train UFC, baby, next podcast. He has to say it. That's the rule.
I get you. Parlay. So let's just say we're gonna do a 3-fighter parlay.
Yeah.
What would you do here? I would go Imavov.
With parlays, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would go. If I was going to do a 3-fighter parlay, I would go Imavov, Ige, and Bilder.
No, that's I can't do that. If I did a 3-fighter parlay, I would go Imavov, Bilder, Maverick. And I don't like including women's MMA in parlays, but I mean, given the uncertainties on other fights, I think that's what I have to do.
I get some questions in here from YouTube before we wrap things up here. Scott says, Imavov Curtis will make or break lineups. I don't think it makes or break lineups.
I don't think, because like Curtis doesn't throw enough, but when he lands, he can knock you out. I think Imavov is going to break the entire slate. That's my hope. So I'm just putting it in universe because I'm going to be so aggressive towards him.
Scott also says same with Zahabi and Aoriqileng. God, I don't feel good about either side of that fight.
I'm worried about that fight because of the low level and how it's just going to lead to something stupid happening, high score. You know what I mean? One big shot, they get dropped, and then a couple hammer fists, and the fight's over. It's like, oh my God, really?
Scott also asking you if you could rematch someone from the past, who would it be?
It's a good question.
Oh, you have a name in your mind right now. I know you do. You've got that look.
I'd want to face them all. I mean, honestly, there's not one that really sticks out. There's so many, man. I can't wait. I can't wait to get back in there.
Yeah. Andrew says, do a 150 max this week, or will that be a gigantic split? Unless we lose fights, I don't see a gigantic split.
I don't think so either. You don't have some chalk crazy like. So what I did last week is I was a little bit more aggressive towards Malarkey than I was Miller, and that turned out to not work out. You know what I mean? Like I got to a lot of both of their opponents, but clearly I should have gone the other way. But I think that's where a lot of people went wrong last week. And there's no free square of the week this week. So that's why I think there's not going to be a split.
Yeah, Lacerda just that wrecked all my lineups.
He looked horrible. I should have known when I saw him at the weigh-in, and he looked super timid. I don't like doing the weigh-in analysis or anything like that, but like sometimes I can catch on body language, and I was just like,
I remember when I finalized my lineups and now DK, it has that where you can see your exposures on DK.
Yeah,
and I was
that now.
I was like, uh-oh, I got way too much.
Yeah, he was.
I was 73%.
Oh my God, Jason.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
had
way too much because he was in every cash build. No, it was all my lineups total.
Oh God!
But he was in every cash lineup. Yeah. When that fight went that way, I was like, and when he was chasing the leg lock, I'm like, oh man, it's 2023, man. I mean,
I thought he was gonna get it, but like, that's where jiu-jitsu guys just don't get it. Where you hold on to a leg, you get punched in the face a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh no. Let's see here. Scott says his over/under is 4.5. Give me the over.
Yeah, I'll go over, but I'm with you.
Eryk is the one who mentioned about who is a potential black shear this week. 8% owned last week. Overlooked fight, 114 points, and early fight in the card. Look, that's one of the things when you have ownership projections where you start looking at, okay, what are the fights that really are not getting ownership? And there's not really a fight that sticks out to me that's not getting ownership. I mean, the Malott ownership is pretty crazy. I definitely want to be on the field on that one. Nunes, I'm not surprised by the ownership in terms of that. I mean, she could go out there and smash, but there's not like a fight where, if you're going to look at a fight that the Dvorak fight is probably the fight to look at, that's an under-owned fight.
Yeah, and if you were looking just from an underdog standpoint, I think it's 1A, 1B. Kyle Nelson, Adam Fugitt are the guys that are super, super low owned that could break the slate like Blackshear did last week.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I feel like all of us are going to have a lineup going into the main event where we're just going to be praying that Nunes doesn't go out there and smash the slate.
Yeah, I know.
But of course, we do have our DK contest. People can sign up for that. Link is in the description. Of course, be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're on the podcast channels. Give us a rating and review. Pete, anything you want to leave the listeners with?
No, just good luck, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in to us. We appreciate it. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the community in our Discord that is linked below. And help us get the channel to 1,000 subscribers. That'd be really, really helpful. And we'll be back next week and for the next 3 months straight.
Yeah, I think it's like 13 weeks in a row of UFC events.
Fun. Can't wait.
Yeah. It's some of these cards you just go, oh man.
Lord.
Another fight. Let's just hope Chris Lee isn't scoring the main event.
I know, really. I had a 2-2 going into the 5th, so
I did too. I don't know how you give the 4th round. Like it's one of those things. Like it's a close fight.
Yeah,
it's not a robbery. Like I saw people call it a robbery. Like no, this is not a robbery. It's just a close fight. But to me, it's one of those situations where you have a close fight, and you see the way a judge scores a certain round, and you just go, "What fight were you watching?"
That's the problem. It's not that it was 3-2. It's that when you go back and you watch, you're like, there's no shot in hell you score for that person.
No, that's just and where I really feel bad in the situation, Pete, is I feel bad for Carl France because he goes home without a second paycheck.
That's how it is every week. And,
I know.
And like you get half your money because of 3 people. But
I don't know what the solution is. I really don't.
I like open scoring. I like open scoring because all it does, I know it may take the drama out of the TV, but I'll tell you what it does is it actually gives some transparency as what the hell's going on heading into these crucial rounds where it's like, okay, I'm down. They might have been drinking something while they were judging the scores, but at least I know I got to do something.
The only way open scoring happens is if someone can convince Dana White.
Right, exactly. Because without the UFC approving it, which I don't think they will, because it creates drama and it creates all these numbers. You know what I mean? Like it's helpful, it's beneficial as much as they, you know what I mean? Like it's chatter. And what it does is it just creates interest one way or another, negative or positive. It's just like, but I would love it because I think that is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, from a fighters aspect, but I just I've heard the pros and cons of it. There is one con I've heard is there's a concern of what if you have a live score, cornerman gets heated about it and goes after the judge.
Okay. I mean, but in my opinion, right? Like they need to be held accountable, and I have good relationships with a lot of people within that whole thing, and accountability is something everybody agrees upon.
Transparent. I would use the term, we need more transparency.
100%. 100%. And like, like it's good to just know rather than after the fact that people are going to be pissed off regardless. But I mean, it's no different than an umpire when they're calling a ball a strike and out. You know what I mean? Like at least it's the same thing. It's just the jobs of refs and judges within, sports and officiating in general. So I think that's a silly cop-out answer, but I think it's just like, we don't want anything bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think there's regulators who are trying. I mean, apparently in California, they're now letting the media essentially come into the roundtable discussion of the commission and the judges. I think that's kind of interesting. And I think that'll be, but also we just need more high quality judges in the sport. And like, look, it's not an easy job. I mean, that's not an easy job. I think it's easy for us to score a fight sitting in front of our television set.
100%. And watching on TV is different than being there too. People don't realize that,
I'll never forget. It was Mike Richmond and Desmond Green, and I was there. And the way I viewed the fight and the way people watching a home view fight were two different things. Because when you're there, you truly get an indication of what strikes are landing and which strikes are notable strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Where on TV, sometimes it just gets taken out of it.
100%. 100%.
So. But look, judging is always going to be a hot topic in MMA. Me and Pete meet here 20 years from now, we'll still be talking about bad scores. I mean, that's just the way it is. But we do appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of Fight HQ. Of course, got any questions, comments, leave those below. We will get to those comments in the chat as well. So we appreciate it. And hopefully everyone has a great weekend.